So I'm delighted to be joined now by Charmaine Noble-McLean, who is Director of Content of Premier, the leading broadcaster in Christian programming, which this year celebrates its 25th anniversary on air. Charmaine, hello. Thank you so much for talking to me today. It's so great to see you.
Lovely to see you as well, Yvette.
Thank you. Now, Premier Christian Radio was a pioneering digital station launching nationally on DAB in 2009, and you continue to pioneer with two further stations launching on the second national commercial multiplex in 2016, Premier Gospel and Premier Praise. So Charmaine, congratulations on the 25th anniversary. But I expect 2020 has not been quite the anniversary you and your colleagues at Premier were anticipating. But that said, the vital role you play in supporting the community and your audiences has never been more apparent and necessary than during this COVID crisis. So thinking back to March and the first lockdown, what specific measures were needed to enable you to keep your stations on air?
Gosh, it feels like eons ago when you asked me that question to reflect back, but we, our CEO pulled us into some very quick, hard meetings and had a really clear plan. One of the things we realised was that we really needed to make sure we were tonally relevant to the disaster, the crisis, the immediate upset that many people, all of us, were experiencing at that time, that disbelief. And so we made some pretty radical changes to our formats across all three stations. We changed presenters, we pulled back on imaging, pulled out everything that just didn't sound tonally right. And all were in agreement that what Premier could offer to our listeners at this time in March was to be a voice of hope. And that was the message we carried across all of our platforms, network, the radio stations, as well as our digital platforms as well. We knew that in these times where people were lost and wondering what on earth was going to happen, we were seeing deaths, the death numbers piling up so quickly, and the horror of that, we knew that we had to give what the church's message is, and that's a message of hope. And so there was a lot of rug pulling, there was a lot of pulling of the tablecloth, and it felt like things were crashing all over the place. But somehow, and I guess it's by God's grace, we were able to get ourselves into a position where our audience, and I had an email from someone just earlier this week actually, who said that Premier has helped sustain her through these two lockdown periods. She's lost her husband, and somehow the message was just right for her in her time of need. And when we get that kind of message, you know we're doing the right thing, and that's a deep listener engagement that we have, a message of hope in the midst of a time of real, unprecedented times, as people are still saying.
And were there specific content or outreach initiatives that you put in place to additionally support the needs of your listeners through COVID?
Yeah, there's a number of things we did, and a lot of them we did online. So fairly quickly we began to launch digital webinars, which were purposed to serve and support church leaders, people who are involved in normal day-to-day activities of parachurch life, whether it was mums and toddler groups that couldn't meet anymore, to youth clubs or youth groups, or helping with the elderly. So we put on a host, and I think we've done so far about 30 of them, with an average about 150 people attending each time, sometimes 500, so it was depending on what the subject was, where they would be able to come and hear from experts in the field and get practical help. It was kind of twofold. One was a time of prayer and fellowship, we could gather together and share in our experiences, but you would be given real practical tools on how to deliver what you were doing in physical form in a digital space, going forward. So that's been really popular. And actually just last month, we are in December now, yes, our PremDAC, Premier Digital Conference, it's an annual conference which is normally hosted in London. Loads of people come from all over the country. Well, we had 1,000 people attending this massive online sequence of seminars and sessions, and that's been really popular. So we've been trying to make sure that we continually equip the church and individuals, Christians, to do what they've been called to do in the digital space. So that's been a massive focus of our work over the past 9 months or so.
Yeah. So digital innovation and distribution has really helped in enabling you to reach your audiences
Absolutely.
and your
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. And it's surprising because a lot of churches, just like we had to, learn to adapt really quickly. It's taken a little bit longer for some, but we've tried to make sure we help cover all of those churches, whether they're a parish church of 10 people or they're a massive church who've got some really skilled people in their areas.
Yeah.
There's something that everybody can learn from and share. And it's been fantastic, actually, the amount of support that other churches are giving to others through Premier, which has been brilliant.
And are you seeing a really high engagement from your listeners as well in terms of how they're responding to?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are. You know, there's the engagement in terms of hearing stories of what key workers have been doing, what their life experience has been, from church leaders who are offering prayer and support in their areas, from ordinary people who are challenged by their experiences. You know, many people having multiple members of their families who are affected by the pandemic. Maybe they've got, you know, somebody working in a hospital, but they're also caring for somebody who's quite elderly. So we've had quite a range. But one of the things I wanted to mention to you about is in terms of Premier Lifeline, which is 25 years old as well, it was launched at the same time as Premier Christian Radio. The numbers of calls we've seen has massively increased. You know, it's about a quarter, 25% of increase on calls from this time last year. And what's quite telling is, apart from the normal kinds of calls that we get, where it might be people struggling with loneliness, relationship issues, just the stuff of life, we're starting to get calls, or we have been since lockdown, getting calls from people talking about feeling crushed, feeling real. I mean, these are some strong words that they're using in their calls for prayer. Furlough, redundancy, worry and stress about having the virus, loneliness because of isolation. These are the kinds of things that our listeners are calling in to talk to us about. And what we try to do is reflect that back to say, well, if you're feeling like this is how you can get help. This is what we can do to support you in those times. So it's kind of a full circle.
Yes. And the role of radio has just never been more apparent, has it, in how you're supporting?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And with Christmas coming up, and specifically, people won't be able to gather and go to church in the way that they usually do. So how are your 3 stations going to fill that gap and help the community cope without such an important element of Christmas for so many?
We've got such a packed lineup across our networks for Christmas. On Premier Christian Radio, we're trying to make sure that we provide the traditional, real meaning of Christmas with all of the normal services that you'd expect to go to. Lots of people like to go out to your normal carol services at Christmas, even if that's the only time they ever darken the halls of a church. And so we will do, you know, your nativity. We've got a lovely cutesy one called Tea Towels and Tinsel, which will be broadcast on Christmas morning. We've got 9 lessons in carols and, you know, the carols by candlelight. And for the first time this year, because many people do like to go to a midnight mass or a midnight communion, so we're going to broadcast a service that people, and we're encouraging people to listen and take part in the event, you know, actually follow the event through, you know, take communion, prepare and have a little bit of wine and bread if you want to. So feel like you're part of a national service with other people in your own living room or your bedroom, wherever you are. So we're trying to make sure that all the trappings of Christmas are reflected through our radio stations. But we do also know that there are some churches that will try to make sure that they are providing digital services for their communities as well. So we've created some free resources that you can get online, which include carol videos with lyrics, which make it a lot easier for people to follow, some lovely reflections that they can use as part of their service with people like Pam Rose, who's a well-known face of Songs of Praise and a presenter on Premier Christian Radio as well. So we're just trying to say, well, if you're a church and you need to pull something together, we'll help you. If you're an individual and you can't get out to church, we'll bring church to you in your living room, wherever you are. Have your sherry and a mince pie and enjoy the festivities as far as you can with us.
Charmaine, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being part of our update for stakeholders. It's been so great to talk to you and hear more about how you've been supporting your listeners during these challenging times, and so great to hear about the plans for Christmas. So I'm going to wish you a happy Christmas.
And you.
Thank you, and look forward to seeing you in 2021. Charmaine, thank you so much.
Thank you.